Dangerous Animals. Good title, but is it a good film? We'll find out in a moment. But first, we're going to start off with the IMDb plot. And it says the girl's name, but I'm not going to butcher it, so I'm just going to say a young woman here to replace that. When a young woman, a savvy and free-spirited surfer, is abducted by a shark-obsessed serial killer and held captive on his boat, she must figure out how to escape before he carries out a ritualistic feeding to the sharks below. All right. Yeah, don't know how to say her name, but anyway. So this is a new film recently out. I'm going to try to keep it fairly spoiler-free, but there are a few things that do happen at the end that I don't think I can go without kind of touching on. So I'm not going to guarantee 100% here. I will try to be vague a little bit. But I'm not going to guarantee I won't maybe hint at what happens towards the end. So be forewarned. I hate to do that, but, a couple of things I want to mention. This is also a shark movie, so you guys have, maybe seen some of my shark reviews. I'm very touchy on the CGI shark issue, and it really is annoying and so forth. We'll see what happens in that respect here as well. I will say expectations were a touch high. I've seen a lot of positive, good reviews, flowing through Twitter there. And also, I think one comparison that kind of piqued my interest and made me really want to see this is kind of tying it into Wolf Creek and Mick, and kind of being the Wolf Creek of the water or on the ocean and so forth. So certainly a big fan of Wolf Creek. Love it. Hopefully it returns as supposed to in some fashion. So definitely pushed me in the direction of having to see this film. But so the expectations are high. So, we'll see in a moment if it kind of met that or not. So basically, what's happened here is kind of, in a similar way, Mick is there in Australia just kidnapping people and killing them because he can and does and wants to. And we have a serial killer here who kind of, wants to kidnap, kill, and feed the fish, specific fish, but that's what he wants to do. Let's give him some credit. He wants to keep the wildlife fed in a very specific way. But anyway, yeah. So the movie opens up and kind of we have two people here, a couple that gonna go shark diving. That's kind of the adventure here that he's selling to go on his boat. And obviously the woman here, she's very nervous about it. I don't, I'm with her. There's no way I'm doing anything like that. I actually almost did once. But there's no way I really want to do that. Let's just say, it wasn't my idea. But yeah, she's super nervous about it, doesn't really want to do it. They eventually, they get on the boat, they get out there, and, he's going to kind of I'm not going to spoil the moment for you, but he makes a funny moment of it before putting them in the cage, and down they go. And, she's freaking out under there, but, all is well. They come out, she seems excited, she had a good experience. And long and behold, she should have been, or I should say they should have been more scared of the captain of the ship than the sharks. Because let's say it just doesn't end well. And he's going to end up dead, and she's going to end up captive. And, that's, the way that ended for at least that moment. Then we also get an introduction to this young woman who the story primarily follows, and she's a surfer, blah blah, and she has a run-in with this guy, and it goes well. I mean, she ends up, kind of almost making it a one night stand with him, and but she tries to kind of get out of it. That's not really, she doesn't really want to be with anybody. But apparently, on his side of everything worked out really well, and he, is, I guess, love struck or whatever you want to call it, and wants to see her, even though because she kind of leaves early, and it's a mistake. Love is good. She should have stayed there, and gave him a chance, because instead, she goes outside, and before you know it, she's abducted by this serial killer shark guy. And she also finds herself on the boat with this other woman here. And before she can kind of formulate a plan to get out, a little bit of time goes on, and then we see exactly what the shark captain is doing. He's basically luring people over the water, kind of hanging them there, and as and kind of say it in a big fishing way, and the shark is going to come and to finish them off, and he's filming it all for his sick enjoyment of it, and that's kind of the basics of it. And from that point on, it's just becomes, can this young woman escape before she basically is going to be fed to the fish or the sharks or whatever you want to say. So that's kind of the basics we have here. So, what to say about the movie? A couple of things, like I said, that I do want to mention. First and foremost, I like the idea of everything. Bringing people on a boat, feeding them to the sharks. Having that excitement and involving the sharks and so forth. So as far as an idea standpoint, I kind of liked all that. I'm a big fan of shark movies, and maybe not the CGI sharks, but shark movies. So, this was kind of a little bit of a different version of one, as opposed to, sending people on a boat, breaks down or boat sinks or whatever, and, we got to survive the sharks, throughout the night or whatever. We get a lot of that. So this was an involvement of sharks in a different way. So I was all for that idea. Also, tying in a serial killer, is another great idea. I think, again, with those expectations, Mick is to me is high expectations, and I think maybe to a lot of horror fans is high expectations. He's a very, kind of unique and great character, and crazy in his own mind. And, to compare this serial killer with him, I think at the end of the day becomes unfair. He's all right. He does, okay things. He's a big, powerful guy too. So he shows that at times. But as far as, kind of his personality and the way he kind of goes about it, to me, it never really matches Mick at all. So, that, when you kind of have that in your head and you're looking for that and then it doesn't, it kind of messes up the expectation there. So, I think maybe that becomes a little bit unfair, but, at the end of the day, he's okay. Maybe he didn't say as much in kind of that same manner. So when you start kind of looking for that, yeah, it does become a little unfair. So he's okay, but not, super fantastic of, personality for the serial killer here. I thought maybe there was moments where he could have said or done some things to maybe even make the, you as the audience not like him a little bit more, but, maybe didn't. Where maybe Mick would have. Again, you try to break that expectation, but once it's in your head, it's there, and you kind of look for that moment, and it just doesn't happen. So yeah, there was that. I also thought it was a little bit of a failure as far as the body count in this movie. Again. You see what he does, and I guess from a movie standpoint, if he was going to drag a whole bunch of different people out there and do the same thing over and over. Maybe as for an audience, maybe, people have complained or people have been like, this is the same thing over and over. But I thought, then at the end of the day, when you're thinking, okay, this is a horror movie and you're looking for the body count, and I mean, obviously not every horror movie has to have, body counts or whatever, blah, blah, but, the way this movie kind of sets up, you kind of want to see that. And to me, the body count becomes a huge failure in this movie. You look for it and it's kind of like, yeah, you can kind of credit the movie. It's actually an hour, almost an hour and 40 minutes. You almost thought, at an hour and 40 minutes, maybe he'd be dragging more people on the boat and feeding them to the sharks here. But, there's one, early on, and, you don't, it's not, so he kills the person, but it's not really a feeding of the sharks kind of moment, really. And, then there's the other, and then there's another kill, but again, it really had nothing, a decent kill. Didn't quite see every second of it, which you would have liked to, but then again, you don't really get a huge feeding of the sharks moment there either. So yeah, you do, scrounging for a few deaths, but, the grand spectacular one is to feed it to the shark, and just don't get enough of that. They do instead give you moments of tension and maybe suspense. He does hang, a certain person or two back over the line there, but, ultimately fails short of having a shark moment. So then again, the body count stays low, and the excitement of that moment kind of stays low. And then, to me, the grand, scheme of everything here is doing that. That's the excitement that he's getting. We see him revisit a moment and that he films, and he's kind of watching it. So, we kind of see, the same one twice. So that's kind of like, so we're really, really missing out. They kind of give you that tension or whatever, but as far as the kill itself, we're really, really missing out on it. Again, I guess choices are made. If he had done that a couple of times, then I might have been here saying, well, it was good the first 2 times, but then, it becomes repetitive. And I could see, people saying that maybe. Maybe there was different ways to kind of incorporate that, do that, and so forth, where maybe, a little more creativity, they could have made it a little bit different or done something, whatever. But instead, it just becomes, instead of a death thing, it becomes a suspense thing, an attention thing, and so forth. Which, probably I could see working for some people, but to me, again, it's a little bit disappointing. The sharks are in the movie. I want to see the sharks. As far as speaking of sharks, the CGI sharks and that kind of issue, I did, I'm not, again, because I guess at the end of the day, part of the complaint here is I guess ends up being a lack of sharks. You want more shark involvement or whatever. So I guess there's not a huge amount of CGI shark to complain about. I think, it's clear early on, you get a moment or two where it's footage of shark. There might be a moment or two, I'm obviously not certified shark expert, but, there are 1 or 2 things I might nitpick at in the film as far as the sharks are concerned. But again, whatever, most people are just going to be like excited to see a shark, whatever. But, it's clear that they kind of use regular shark footage. So, you're not really complaining, but obviously the sharks are not there, and that's not really involved in that, and so forth. Kind of sticking with the shark, okay, we're going to fast forward to a big moment here. Try to keep this as spoiler free at the as I can, so I'll be a little bit of vague, but I guess there is a moment there where I guess you can say a shark is basically going to be face to face with someone, and it's just an odd moment, and kind of maybe if you want to say again, uh, brings in, cinematic a moment, tension. I don't know. Maybe they thought it was good for the film, a good moment, and so forth. To me, it was dumb and awkward and didn't make any sense, and was kind of like, what are we like having a whispering shark moment here, and it kind of annoyed me. That was bothersome and very annoying. Um, they flip it, and not too long after try to give you a moment of excitement, a moment of, if you are a fan of sharks or Shark Week or anything, shark movies and so forth. They try to then kind of flip that on you and give you what you want. And, again, it's 50-50 here again, because a moment ago I just complained about the lack of shark, and then they give you a shark. But that shark moment, I'm not buying it. Again, not certified shark expert or whatever, but just the way that kind of played out, and after the moment that we just had, it just really doesn't make sense. At least made sense to me. Obviously, putting it together in the film or whatever, film wise and story wise, and the way you're putting it together, and what you would expect, movie wise, it all makes kind of sense. From a perspective of watching it as a horror fan and person who likes sharks and so forth, and that kind of thing, and that moment and then this moment combined, I was like, oh, come on, like, no, like, you needed to bypass that other moment, and if you would have just given me this moment, then maybe I'd be like, okay, I'm fine with that and whatever. But to combine those two moments, you bring me down with to my eyes, with a stupid moment, and then try to give me excitement, and then, again, talking about the CGI shark thing and that forth. I watched it, and I was like, I almost feel like I need to go back and watch that again, just to quite see, like what, how they tried to pull that off, or if I was seeing right, as far as how that was filmed and what they did there. So I'm not really sure, but I think I was still kind of taken aback about the stupid moment that I had just seen, that, I was kind of like, okay, that was still bothering me. So then when this moment happened, I was just kind of like, okay, so, now what are you doing to me here? So yeah, so I guess at the end of the day, and then they do something else, I guess, another thing after that, which, also, again, I guess the thing to, I guess, say is that they kind of lean more on the suspense and tension of things than killing and blood and guts and that kind of thing in the movie. And to me, I would have rather seen it the other way, because then, after that moment, they give you another moment of tension and suspense, but it ends up being nothing, and you're just kind of like, why? You just did nothing but give me another moment of dramatics here and more dramatics, and where are the sharks? Where's the blood? Where's the guts? He's a serial killer. Let's see more of this going on. Even if they would have had a scene where he's sitting down and popping in videotapes, and you're watching different, like, they could have, almost given you in that way, and then I'd have been like, oh, okay, well, so maybe we didn't see it, but we didn't see more of his videotapes there of people dying and getting eaten by the sharks. So, I maybe, been a tad more happy, but, yeah, let's just say I just wasn't buying the end of this movie. Just like, no. So yeah. So I guess to kind of sum everything up, it definitely did not meet those high expectations. I'm sure if Mick was on the water, he would have fed plenty of people to the sharks. We would have seen plenty of shark killings, and would have been that much happier for it, if that's what you want in your horror. So really, if you're looking for the shark deaths in this movie and that kind of thing, and the excitement of that, you might be disappointed. I was disappointed. If you're into the suspense and tension of the moment, and maybe a little bit of excitement and that kind of thing, then maybe it worked out, well for you. That seemed to be the direction that they were going, and that's, fine. But that's not what I wanted. When I see a shark movie, I want to see sharks eating people. That's the point of having sharks. That's why you have them in the movie. And that's why you do shark movies. And to just not give you enough of it is disappointing. And that's not the first time. We've had many a shark movie where you're waiting for the sharks and you're waiting for the sharks to eat people, and it's just not happening. And then then you get the CGI sharks, and it's just awful altogether. So again, I continue to maybe kind of look for a really good shark movie that's done really well with a very lacking of CGI sharks. Lots of shark deaths. I know it's asking for a lot, but damn it, I continue to say it. We get movies with freaking dinosaurs that look pretty damn real. They're fake, but they look pretty damn real. We get deaths and whatever, and we see movies with all these other animals killing people, and it looks so damn real and whatever. And just these damn shark movies, damn CGI, or we get just regular footage of sharks, but that had nothing to do with the movie. I mean, for that, I turn on an old episode of Shark Week, and we're good to go. And it just I don't know. So I guess, again, at the end of the day, it definitely did not meet or I shouldn't say my Wolf Creek expectations. Somebody else said it and kind of put that in my head, and it definitely did not meet that. The movie otherwise, again, like I said, not a bad idea, not a bad story, and so forth. Definitely gives you a certain thing. Wasn't what I was looking for, so, if it was what you're looking for, then that's fine. Certainly worth seeing. Like I said, it is a good movie. There's nothing wrong with the acting or how they filmed it or so forth, blah, blah, blah. And it's not overloaded with CGI sharks and so forth. We're seeing, yes, it's just depending on what you want out of it. So with that, I think I'm just going to give it 2.5 pools of blood. Like I said, the okay movie, just I see where they're going with it. They did accomplish those things, but not what I wanted to see. So I think that's kind of why I have to go down the middle with it. So that's 2.5 pools of blood out of 5. So with that, horrorsgorereviews.blogspot.com is where you can find all my reviews written in video. Certainly, mostly video reviews for a long time now. So you can like, subscribe, and do everything else that everybody wants to do here on YouTube. If not, no worries, it is okay. I thank you for your time regardless. Twitter, Facebook information down below. Reach out to me there. Talk about this movie, other movies, shark movies, CGI sharks, in the comment section as well. Did you like this movie? Not? CGI sharks? Do you want to complain? Do you love CGI shark movies? If you do, God bless you. And feel free to put that in the comment section as well. So with that, I will catch you on the next review, horror fans.